Okay, welcome back to the second hour of Dr. J Radio Live. I'm your host, Dr. J, broadcasting from the City of Angels or City of Demons, depending upon who you ask. And as you know, we are internationally syndicated, starting with our home base in the U.S., late night in the Midlands, as well as our terrestrial networks, as well as Black Swamp Digital Radio, and in the United Kingdom, we have Deprogram Radio and their terrestrial stations, including London, Leeds, and wherever else they carry the show. Now, we are changing gears for this second hour. We are going to bring something much more lighthearted and something that everybody needs more of. Laugh, more laughs. Laughs. The smiles that you people can actually have do so much for you. First of all, they're contagious. Second of all, they can help you get over things. And on top of that, it's just a good feeling to be happy and to be smiling. Well, I've been giving you enough of the hints of who our guest is. And of course, as you know, then if you've seen all the promotions from all over the place, from the website, from Instagram, Twitter, Flickr, Tumblr, Facebook, everything, then you know who I'm speaking about. She is not only a stand-up comedian, a radio and TV personality, and an author. And that happens to be the one and only comedian, Miss Von Decarlo. Von, welcome to the show.
Hi, that was an amazing introduction. Thank you.
It's all the truth. And I got to say, your comedy really always gives me the laughs, depending on whatever mood I am in. And I know you have to agree with this. If people are sad or if people are angry, the more comedy they have, the more laughs they have, the more smiles they have, the better it is to snap them out of the moods.
Absolutely. Everything that you said, even before you introduced me regarding comedy and feeling good and feeling happy, it's all so true. And I don't know why, but for some reason, people sometimes actually feel guilty when they're happy. I think we live in such a stressful society that when you feel happy and joy, you almost feel awkward and weird. Like, wait, where's this peace and love and happiness coming from? This is weird.
It's
but
true.
I think we should all literally be in pursuit of our happiness, and not in a very cliche, all-American kind of way, but for our souls. You know, it's stress and all kinds of crazy stuff that happens every day in life. You have to find your peace of mind, whatever it is, because stress is the number one killer, and it takes form in diseases like cancer and stroke and diabetes and all that fun stuff, you know? So yeah, I'm very blessed that comedy has been my lifesaver for a very long time, and I'm very grateful for that.
Now, let's go back to the beginning. How did you get into comedy?
Well, see, I was born, and then the rest is history. Actually, I'm from small town USA. Pittsburgh is what people would recognize, but I didn't grow up in the city of Pittsburgh. I grew up about 30 miles south in a small steel town called Clairton, Pennsylvania. And I grew up, you know, in poverty, in the projects, in the hood, you know, whatever early 90s old school movie about poverty and drugs taking over when crack hit. That's pretty much my story. That's how I grew up. I woke up in the projects. I was born and I woke up in the projects. So when I was younger, one thing that definitely happens in my culture, when you're really poor and you don't have a lot, you do find laughter and happiness wherever you can. It's part of your survival. It's figuring out how to have peace of mind amongst so much trauma. And that's how I grew up. And when I was around 10 years old, I believe I was around 10 years old, I had I wrote a letter describing myself to my grandmother that I had never met. And in the letter, I talked about moving to New York City one day and doing comedy and being a writer because, you know, being a writer, writing is where you're free. And I wanted to do plays and all these things. I wanted to be an actress. And basically what I, long story short, said in this letter as a little kid, in a very little kid kind of way, is that's the only place, and I did say this in a letter, where you can be free, is when you're being creative, when you're writing, when you're playing pretend and all of these things. And I think that our spirits know who you are. And I've even taught that to my kid. You can try and run away from who you are, but you knew who you were when you were a kid. Whatever you gravitated towards, whatever you wanted when you were young, and it stuck to you as you got older, that's not by accident. That's who you are. And you can run away from it for as long as you want to, but it will find you. And as I got older, when I was younger, but older than 10, I became obsessed with Whoopi Goldberg and Diana Ross. So I thought one day I would move to New York and be like Whoopi Goldberg with a splash of diva. You know, I would be in comedy and television and film and theater. And her one-woman show really inspired me. I memorized all the monologues from her HBO one-woman show many eons ago. And I would perform all the different characters and the monologues for my family and make them laugh. And then, you know, all of who I am has stuck with me for many, many years. And here we are, cut to present day. And I could tell many stories of how comedy has saved my life in New York City. And just, I'm here alone. I don't have family here. You know, when I first moved to New York, I moved here alone, fresh off the bus of small town USA with no direction whatsoever. All I knew is that, you know, I stood in Times Square and I'm like, okay, I'm here. We can get started now. It's just, where do I go to be Whoopi Goldberg famous? You know, I'm still not Whoopi Goldberg famous, as you probably already know from my history of who I am. I'm not a A-list celebrity or anything like that, but I'm certainly making my way through comedy. And it's something that, you know, I'll do forever. There's no other option in my mind.
And you are recognized amongst comedians as being a top comedian, and I see your success. As a matter of fact, one thing I was going to get to later, but we could talk about now, is the fact that you have a comedy show on Sirius XM. I know it's on hiatus for the holidays, but just to get to that level, to be on Sirius XM, and I got to tell you, as a subscriber to Sirius XM, 5 out of my 6 presets are comedy, because, you know, without it, like you said, you know, you need more of it. And when you talked about growing up in the projects, you have violence, you have shootings, you have sadness all around. Well, the only way you could sort of snap out of it is try to look at the brighter side of life. And it goes also to that glass is half full. Well, even if the glass has a couple drops of water, there still is water. That's the positive influence.
Right. When a lot of people start to lose hope, you know, I have this hashtag I use on my social media, Twitter and Instagram specifically. If you want to follow me on social media, you can go to @Von Decarlo on either one, or just Coach Von, VON.com, for links to all of my social media, because some people find it hard to spell DeCarlo. I don't know why, but it gets misspelled a lot. But yeah, on my social media, I'll use the hashtag stay in the light. Whenever whenever a thought comes across me that I want to put out there that inspires me one way or another, just random thoughts. The way I describe the light, you know, because there's darkness in the world, there's light in the world, and people are always talking about the light at the end of the tunnel. And, you know, if you could see, like you said about the water, if it's a drop in there, there's water.
That's right.
You may be going through a lot, and you're like, you know what? This tunnel is long as hell, and that light is dim as fuck. But I'm sorry, did I curse? I apologize for that.
It's okay. We'll fix it.
as hecky poo. Loose lips. I'm so sorry. But the light is very dim. But it doesn't matter because it's still there, and you just keep walking towards it. The light meaning good energy, good thoughts, positive thoughts, good energy. And the darkness, people may describe that as, if you're describing the light as God in a spiritual sense, then that means the darkness will be negativity, the devil, demons, however you want to describe darkness, dark energy, negative energy. Whatever you gravitate towards and whatever you feed in this world, good or bad, it will grow. That is the law of the universe. It's just like when you step out on the edge of a window, it doesn't matter if you're a good person or if you're a bad person, the law of gravity says you're going to hit the ground if you go too far out on the ledge, right?
Yes.
So if you fall out of a window, doesn't matter. You're going to hit the ground. That is the law of gravity. So energy is very real. Our thoughts are very real. Words are very powerful. All of these things. So no matter how dark it's been for me, I've always tried my best to hang on to that light. And I feel like the closer I get to the light, just like anything you get closer to, the vision gets more clear, the light gets more bright, and you could go in the other direction. And I think, I'm not a doctor or mental health qualified to talk about mental health, but in the spiritual sense, in the context of what we're talking about right now, when I think about people who may have committed suicide or gave up hope, I imagine that giving up of hope, they listened to those dark voices more than the light voices. They grew closer to the darkness. They got further and further away until it was hopeless, and there was no light. And of course, if you don't see a light, then what are you moving towards? There's nothing but darkness around you. So you always have to keep that. And where I grew up, it wasn't a conscious effort. It's like I said, it was just a survival mechanism. It's not like everyone goes, hey, it's a lot of trauma, drugs, murders, all this crap is around me. Let's think of the world as half full, not half empty. It definitely was not like that. It was more subconscious effort of survival where you will find a laugh in anything. You can literally find a laugh in anything. It's there. And it just depends on your attitude about it.
I'm getting a question and a request from the listeners. I'm actually going to hold off on that for a little bit longer because I want to go back a little bit more into your history. I want to ask you, you mentioned Whoopi Goldberg and you also mentioned Diana Ross as people that you wanted to be as famous as. And Whoopi Goldberg is not only a very, very famous actress, but she's also very known for her comedy. But what comedians growing up influenced what you became today?
That's a really good question. But when I was younger and feeling inspired to be in the entertainment business, I wasn't old enough to watch Richard Pryor.
Yes.
I remember hearing my parents listen to Richard Pryor in the other room and just feeling the energy of the room and how whatever it was that he was saying to make them laugh and to uplift the energy in the room. I didn't know how to articulate that as a little kid, but I knew it was powerful. And I, as a comedian, I think just growing up in high school, I started doing a lot of just natural funny ability. I just started a lot of self-deprecating comedy to almost fit in, meaning I'm a very down to earth, like kind of a tomboy-ish in a sense of my love of sports, even though I'm not an athlete. Just a tomboy frame of mind and conversations that I like to hold and things of that nature. But when people look at me, they get, like, on the surface, they'll get a lot more Diana Ross than they would Whoopi right up front when you look at me. My presence suggests that I'm diva and not down to earth, very serious and not very funny. Very much the opposite of what I look like is the actual core of the person that I am. So in high school, you know, again, not deliberately, subconscious effort of trying to prove, you know, oh, I'm not just, oh, you're pretty. So here's the assumptions about a pretty girl that we have. And none of it is usually pleasant. It's usually stuck up, conceited, thinks she's all that, all of these things. So to fit in and be considered cool, I got into a habit of, if someone complimented me, I would say thank you and then have an immediate comeback of an insult. Like, oh, your hair is so pretty. And I'm like, yeah, but, you know, I have a lazy left eye. If you look long enough, it's crooked. You know, I would just start to make people laugh at things about me that they may or may not have noticed. So, again, it wasn't something that I was like, oh, I'm going to do this. It's a lot of natural instincts of who we all are as people that gets us to where we are just in life. So I would have to answer your question and make a long answer longer, I would still go back to Whoopi Goldberg because she was the first comedian that I tried to mimic. I never tried to mimic anyone in stand-up per se, and some people may not consider some of what Whoopi Goldberg has done stand-up comedy in the same sense of a George Carlin, Richard Pryor, all of these guys, you know. And certainly as her one-woman show with characters and things like that, that's not my technique of stand-up at all, right? In my life to this day, I don't do character. Like, that's not my lane at all. But she was really the first person that I ever tried to mimic what comedy was on purpose. Like, I watched it and I said, I want to do that. I mimicked it and then I tried to do it. As far as stand-up itself, I just kind of ended up in it. You know, I just naturally did it. And it's the only thing that I've ever done in the entertainment business because I've done a lot of different talent, like many artists have. And in my early years in New York in the early 2000s, I became a jack of all trades, master of none. And, you know, I did a lot of different things, including stand-up, but I wasn't doing stand-up full time because I was doing everything. I was acting, I was doing theater, I was doing music, I sing, I everything.
Radio too.
I did college radio, and when I first came to New York, I did not do a lot of radio at first. I'm talking about at first. Like, I did TV, acting, stand-up, but improv, I'm trying to remember. I feel like I'm thinking so far back. But radio I did in college, and I don't remember, to be honest, when my radio career started per se. The lines are a bit blurred in that. But when I first did stand-up, like to this day, stand-up is the only thing that I've done that I do not get nervous at all. I never get nervous doing stand-up comedy. I get nervous acting. I get nervous singing. I get nervous for everything except stand-up, which tells me as a person who's grown many years in this business, and as a person, that tells me right there what my God's grace is.
Yeah, where you belong.
It's also
in life.
the only thing that I've done where I enjoy the entire process, even the stuff that's annoying or tedious. Much like a basketball player, when people see the NBA, they see LeBron James or even the sixth man off the bench that, you know, your average person on the street may not know because they're not a super celebrity or a household name like a LeBron James. Many people, you know, we see the game and we don't see their process. But I've watched many interviews and documentaries and spending the day with ex-athlete. And when you see their routine, their daily routine, it answers the question, wow, this explains why they are able to do what they are able to do. To us, it just looks like magic. Like, oh, they just get out there and they just do it. But really the process of it is crazy. So it's not amazing that athletes who don't make it pro, and I'm not saying all of them, but a lot of them may be people that are not in love with the process, not in love with the discipline, the work. They just want, like, there's a lot of people who try stand-up comedy. They get on stage and they may have a joke or two that hits, but when you really get into the process of stand-up comedy and the long, lonely journey it is, you're going to tap out. If being a stand-up comic is not what you are in your core, you won't last. And that counts for people who use stand-up comedy to become famous and get in movies and on sitcoms and stuff. You'll tap out. You won't do stand-up anymore because you're not a true stand-up comedian. Kevin Hart is a great example. Kevin Hart does a zillion movies. He has everything under the sun that any entertainer could ask for, an enormous amount of success. But right now, it would not be surprising if he walked into the Comedy Cellar and was like, hey, I'm going to pop up and work on this 10 minutes that I just wrote. Because he is a stand-up comedian to the core. Not one gazillion-dollar movie that he is in with any other famous person is taking him away from his core, which is a stand-up comedian. I believe that Kevin Hart, as an example, will do stand-up comedy forever, even if his success fades, because there's other comedians that grew a certain amount of success. And then you go, wait a minute, why haven't they been on stage for X amount of time? And I'm not talking about the vets like a Eddie Murphy that, you know, it has done totally different than what I'm talking about, because Eddie Murphy could get on stage right now and I bet you he'd still be amazing.
Oh, yeah.
But there are some examples of people that are just using comedy to become famous in other areas. And that was one of the things I learned early on. My desire to be famous or in like $1 million films and all of that is just not important to me. What's important to me is if I raise my profile high enough to get people to want to come see me do stand-up comedy, because that is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I want to be a well-respected comedian, and that may not come with fame and fortune. And I'm fine with that. I don't want to struggle forever and for the rest of my life. It would be nice to be established enough to where, you know, you have all of these movie deals and all of these great things. But my responsibility to myself is to be a solid, good comedian, so that if I should be so blessed and lucky enough to get an amazing film deal or TV deal or something like that, and my profile is raised high enough for people to want, and now I'm selling out. I'm a headlining international comedian. I can sell out any room. I can sell out theaters. But are these people, am I stealing money from these people, or am I giving them a good, solid, thoughtful show, so that when they leave, they don't feel like, ugh, why did I spend that money? That sucked, or, oh, whatever. I want to make sure that I am being mindful of my comedy and my comedy audience that I'm growing and my fan base that I'm growing, so that they know when they come see me, they're going to laugh. It's going to be thought-provoking. I'm going to be responsible with my words. I'm not going to cheat them out of their experience that they're buying to hear me speak. And that's what's most important to me. It's not being famous. It's just we're in an industry that the more well-known you are, the more profile, the higher profile you have, the bigger audience you have, and so on and so forth. So the way I came to that conclusion was just over the many, many, many years of being in the industry. But one of the first auditions I went on, when I finally got enough nerve to start auditioning in New York City, was for a reality TV show called Temptation Island, which, by the way, they're revamping, and it's going to come out again in 2019, so I've heard. But that was the first audition I ever went on, and I booked it. And here I am, small town girl that grew up in a project that doesn't even know how to open a bank account. I'm now in Belize shooting the hottest new reality show. At the time, it beat out The West Wing, which was the most popular TV show on TV at the time. Temptation Island was way ahead of its time of reality TV. I like to say that I was the beginning of the downfall of trash TV, the beginning of its end. And here's how the story is relevant. I really thought, like, wow, I'm on this hit show, 17 million viewers on the first night. This is going to be my ticket, And I was the first woman, I was the first single, because there was couples and there were single women and single guys. And Temptation Island is a show where they put couples, not married couples, but couples that have been together a while, that want to test the boundaries and see if they're going to be together. And they put them on this beautiful island with a bunch of single girls and a bunch of single guys. And they test their relationship and see if they're, still want to be with each other after dating all of these. It's Temptation Island. You get it.
Yeah, of course. Are they tempted to go with somebody else?
Right. So in the very first episode, they got to decide, the couples get together, all the girls that are in couples get together, and they get to vote the one female off that they all four collectively agree their guys are going to go after. They get to vote her off. And the guys that are in couples get to do the same thing to the single guys. Whoever they collectively think that all of their girlfriends are going to be attracted to, they get to get rid of that guy. So I was standing next to this Playboy model who had just been in the Madonna music video, and her name was Lola Corwin. I'll never forget. So she's gorgeous, voluptuous, Asian American woman. And I'm standing next to her, and I'm like, girl, you ain't got to stand a chance. They all gonna want you. And Mark Wahlberg announced the first guy. He gets booted, and then they announced the first girl, and it was me. I was like, what? So I was the first one voted off at Temptation Island for being, quote unquote, too intimidating. The one girl that they walked. It was the biggest blessing in disguise, because I get home, crash land back in New York off of, Temptation Island, and I got nothing out of the show, even though, 17 people saw me on the show, 17 million people saw me on the show. It was highly popular, and nothing happened. And that's when I had the epiphany, like, hey, stop trying to be famous and just work on your skills. Because as many, many veterans in this game have advised me, something that I realized that very day was, if you make yourself undeniable to the powers that be, they will have to use you. at some point. Everything that I get right now, it's because I'm just doing the work. Nothing magical is happening. No one's handing me anything for free. I'm just getting things based on what I've already been doing. I've been doing, comedy, meshing comedy and sports since like 2006 or 7 when I first logged on to Twitter, which was my whole outlet to just trash talk, in the NBA. Talk mess about. That's where the name Coach Vaughn came from, actually. I didn't make that up for myself. That came from my Twitter following, which was built on me just calling the games, tweeting the games. That's how my whole social media following was built. And they would laugh at some of the things I would say, and they started calling me Coach Vaughn because they would say I knew more than Coach D'Antoni. Mike D'Antoni, who's now the Houston Rockets coach, but he was the coach for the Knicks at the time. So they started calling me Coach Vaughn. And then cut to many, many years later, I wrote a book, which is, relationship-based. And, I started doing television appearances for, like, relationship advice and life coaching advice, even though, again, just like sports, I'm not a real coach. I'm not a sports journalist per se. I don't have a license to give advice, life coaching advice to anyone. But I do have a lot of experience as a woman, as a mother, as a person in this business. And I'm a good listener. And I'm very intuitive. My superpower is like the Avenger Mantis. Like, I feel everything, very intuitive, good listener. And yeah, I can give you quote unquote advice in a particular direction. And usually it's really easy to do that, because the big thing that people miss in their personal and professional life is just to be honest with themselves. So as soon as you crack that open, the door is wide open. When you are bold enough and courageous enough to just be yourself, which is the easiest and hardest thing on earth to do at the same time. Easy because every person is unique. God created one you. There's no other you. So it's easy to be you. Same reason why it's the hardest thing to be is because you are unique. No one else is like you. So everyone is constantly trying to fit into this I'm just like you box. So as soon as you let all that go and just be unapologetically yourself, then the world is definitely your oyster. That's where your peace and joy is. That's where that light at the tunnel gets so bright, because things just come to you when you're living your honest life and living your truth. It has no other choice but to work out.
We have a little over 15 minutes left, and I have a lot to ask you. I should have booked you for a full 2 hours, but next time we will.
My God, am I talking that much?
No. Before I go into what I wanted to ask you, let me just read to you the 3 most recent requests I've been getting since the moment we started talking. 1, is she going to do a comedy piece? 2, we are all waiting for it. And another one, can she give us an example of her comedy live here?
Okay. Number 1, did you say comedy beef? Like
piece,
beef, like
piece.
Roast battle?
No, like a piece.
Piece?
Yeah.
A comedy piece?
Yeah. Skits.
Oh, you mean like tell
now
one of my
jokes? Coming in. Comedy skit is another message just came in.
Oh, a comedy skit? Actually, on my show, when it's back up in the coming year, definitely keep an eye out for that on Sirius XM. One of the things that I love to do, it's the favorite part of the show for everyone that listens to it, is this improv skit that I do called The Young and the Restless of the NBA. Now, if you're an NBA fan or if you know sports at all, in 2018, they are so dramatic. Like, I'm like, did they hire WWE writers for these storylines? Because it is always so much drama. So I came up with this skit, and whoever my guests are on the show, which are usually fellow comedians, I do a skit based on whatever drama is happening in the week. So we play the Young and the Restless or whatever soap opera music, dun, 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 under us talking and improving whatever the situation is. Example, when Kyrie Irving, out of frustration, threw the basketball into the stands, I did a skit, The Young and the Restless of the NBA, featuring myself as the ball that he threw into the air, and the other comedian that was there, I forget who was there that day, he played Kyrie Irving. And I was saying, like, hi, I'm the ball that Kyrie Irving threw into the air. I am an NBA ball. I decided not to be in the NFL for a reason. I don't like flying far distances. So I believe Kyrie Irving owes me an apology. So I played the ball. It was hilarious. I played the ball. One of the other comics played Kyrie, trying to issue an apology for throwing the bar such a long distance when, she's an NBA ball and does not like to be touched the wrong way and thrown. She's trained for the NBA floor, not for a quarterback to throw long distances in the NFL. So I do that on the show. It's a favorite of mostly all the listeners that listen in and they respond to me on my social media, on Twitter and Instagram. They all laugh at that. It's very fun to do, especially because it's not a written out, perfected skit. I just say the subject, and because I have a improv background as well, I went to UCB in New York City. I finished the program there, and I was a UCB Diversity Scholarship member. That's where I discovered musical improv. And then I went on to complete the musical improv program at Magnet Theater and the Pit. And that's where I did my one-woman show several years ago. Then I am working on another woman show as we speak, which maybe in a year or two I'll come back and we'll be ready to put that out there. But anyway, this skit is not a perfected skit, and that's what makes it so fun. You just have the subject line. Whoever my guest is, they don't know what it's going to be. I just tell them on the break, hey, it's Kyrie Irving, the ball. You play Kyrie, I'll play the ball. And then we just yes and the situation, and it turns out hilarious.
True improv. That's exactly what true improv is. It's non-scripted, and that's what I love about the most. Let me ask you this, Vaughn. Can you explain for our listeners how you became the head comedian on BET/Centrix, according to him and her?
Show was my defining moment of me saying, I have to do stand-up full-time. Because at the time I was doing the show, I wasn't doing stand-up full-time. I was still in my phases of dipping in and out. And I remember they had a special that they were filming. It was called Live at the Improv, featuring comedians from According to Him and Her. And I was so heartbroken that I was not in a place in my stand-up where I could be considered for this show. I watched, everyone went up. They did a great job. Rick Michaels was on it. Billy Sorrell, Tiffany Haddish killed it, the whole night. Everyone thought, why is Vaughn not doing it? And I just wasn't prepared to even be considered for that portion of the show's special. And it was heartbreaking. And when I got home, I said, you know what? I have to do it full time. And ironically, sometimes when you tell yourself to do something, you don't do it right away. Here's circling back to what I said earlier in the conversation. Who you are will always find you, no matter what. You could run away from it forever. It will find you. I hadn't even made a decision to be out there doing stand-up full time. And I kept getting calls for gigs for stand-up. I'm like, this is so weird. Why are people calling me to do stand-up? And I said, I hear you, God. And from that point on, I made stand-up comedy my number one priority. And ever since I've done that, nothing but opportunity has come my way. So I say all that to say, never, ever, ever deny your true self. Be as bold and confident as you can possibly be in living out whatever crazy dream you think it is. It's not a dream. It's an actual goal. If it's in your heart and is that deep, it will haunt you for the rest of your life. You might as well give into it and do it, whatever it is. If you're an accountant, but you're gravitating towards like dental work and wanting to fix teeth, you're probably a dentist. Stop crunching numbers and go be a dentist. It doesn't always have to be the art. You know, everyone's not a singer, a rapper, an athlete, a comedian. There are people that truly in their heart, they're a nurse. But for some reason, they're working as a manager at Subway.
Yeah, yeah.
But no,
it's like you said, follow your heart. Be yourself.
Otherwise, it's gonna find you. It's gonna haunt you every night. It's gonna be in your dreams. You're gonna get phone calls. If you're supposed to be a doctor, but you're denying that, someone is gonna get sick on an airplane or something, and you're gonna just know how to help them and not know why. It's just gonna be godly, because that's your purpose. Walking your purpose.
Let me try to cram as much of this as I can before we get off in 10 minutes. You wrote a book, Speak Fluent Man. When was that book written, and what inspired you to write that book?
When did I write the book? I think around, Jesus, I should know this, 14 or 15. It was inspired by the relationship I was in with Patrice O'Neal. It's a memoir of our relationship, and it's not something that I wanted to do. It was something that he wanted me to do when he was still with us. And he said, you know, you speak fluent me. You speak fluent Patrice. And if anyone is familiar with comedian Patrice O'Neal, he is well known for his out of the box philosophies on relationships and women and whatnot. So a lot of times misunderstood. And he said, you know, hey, you get it. And I was in a relationship with him for 10 years before he passed away. And he said, you should write a book, my philosophies from your point of view as a woman. And I looked at him like he was crazy, like, no, God, I do not want to do that. No way. Oh, my God, no. And he said, no, you should. Women listen to you differently than they do me. You know, you have a lot to offer to other people. And I was resistant. And he said, you just want to be the only cool girl. You're selfish. I was like, okay. So he said, do me a favor. Just write down the top things you learned in our relationship. And if you were to ever do a book, what would it be? What would those top things be? So I gave him like an outline, like bullet points. And it included things like jealousy, entitlement, double standards, sex, trust, all these different things. And he looked at it, he goes, one day you'll have a bestseller. And I put it away, and I was like, thank God he's not going to, you know, really push me to do this. And when he passed away, I got into work mode of whatever he wanted me to do, whatever work we were working on together, because I worked with him on many of his projects, his albums and so forth. And I said, whatever he wanted me to do, I am going to do my best to complete those things. And the book was one of them. And I wrote it. It was very emotional, took a lot out of me. If you read the reviews on Amazon, people say that there's life-changing information in there, both men and women. Don't let the title or the book cover fool you. It's self-published. I put it out there, and then I'm more reluctant to go read it. I'd rather not talk about it. It's just so much for me. I did it. I feel like he's happy that I did it and proud that I did it, or would be, I should say. And then I just kind of leave it there. But the book is on my website as well. Coach Von, VON, to links to the book, my social media, my radio show, everything, my stand-up. Like if you're in New York or the surrounding areas, January 15th, I'm doing my first headlining gig. Very important. I would love people to come out and support. This is a big deal to me. I did a lot of work in comedy this year that I could be proud of. I booked commercials this year. I did Just for Laughs in Montreal for LOL Network, which is Kevin Hart's Heartbeat network, and I did True TV Laugh Tracks. I'm going to be on CNN's year-end wrap-up show called All the Best, All the Worst of 2018. The list goes on and on, how many doors and blessings that have been opened up for me just in this year alone. But I must say, being able to do my first headlining set is what I am most excited about. So I'm moving into 2019 as a headliner and ready to build on my stand-up and my fan base for people that are going to come out, laugh with me, think with me, and just, one day I would love to, if there's anything I would like to emulate that Patrice had as far as being a comedian, because he was well known as a comic. If you look at him, he's a black man, he's big, 350 pounds, 6'4" or 5, something like that. Big, tall, black guy. No one described him or prefaced his description when it came to his comedy. Because even if he was talking about being overweight or anything like that, his words were powerful. He was funny, but he was thought-provoking. He was so good at what he did that you could not describe him as a fat black comic. He was known as a comics comic. So the only thing I want to do, I want to be known one day as a very well-respected comedian. When people go, who's your favorite? When you're interviewing someone like me hundreds of years from now or whenever it happens, because it could take my whole lifetime, I want someone to go, Von Decarlo. And I don't want them to describe me as, oh, that female comic or the best female comic or, oh, that pretty comic. None of that. Just funny.
Just the
funny
comic.
Ahead of everything.
Yes.
A well-respected comedian that is known for her thought-provoking, funny point of view. And that's it.
Okay, here's a couple more things I'm trying to get in before we run out of airtime. For your podcast, Vaughns Corner, which guests did you find most interesting and why?
Okay, so just to clarify, my podcast is Coach Von's Podcast, and you can find that on my website as well. I do my podcast alone. I don't have guests on there for the most part. Coach Vaughns Corner is a Sirius XM radio show. It's not a podcast. My favorite guests on that, you know what? I don't want to play favorites because
I know that. I know exactly that
say,
feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have to play favorites. They were all fun guests. But the most special show, obviously, was my premiere show. I launched October 17th. Donnell Rollins was my first book guest, and Bill Burr did a surprise drop-in. And that was a hell of a kickoff for my first episode, for my first show.
Now, when you entered Sirius XM, you were the first woman to host her own show on Sirius XM, which you just said, Coach.
No. Not on Sirius XM. They have many female hosts throughout many of their channels. I was the first female host to host her own show on the NBA channel.
I see, on the NBA channel. Okay. But still, that's a big feat in itself. I mean, you're always going to be the first.
Always going to be the first. I'm very proud of that as a woman, as a black woman, and as a comedian. Those are all really big deals. Even though, not to go against what I just said and not being letting the description precede you, but you also have to recognize when you are a part of history, and that's a big deal for me. So I take that, you know, that's like getting an Oscar or something in my mind. Like, that was a huge accomplishment. I'm very, very proud of that.
Now, something coming up right now that you alluded to, Caroline's on Broadway show. Let's talk about that in New York City.
Okay. That is the gig I was talking about a few minutes ago, my first headlining gig, January 15th, Caroline's on Broadway. My first headlining set. You can use the promo code Coach Von, VON, to make tickets $10. And if you're in New York or the tri-state area, you're familiar with Caroline's on Broadway, you know that is super duper duper cheap. So please go to my website. Look on the menu bar where it says stand up, and you'll get links to Caroline's, or just go to Caroline's and look me up for January 15th. It's one show. Use the promo code Coach Von and get tickets for $10. And please come out and see me and be part of the journey. This is my first step towards building that headlining career in comedy, and I'm very excited about it.
You mentioned your website, coachvon.com, right?
Yes.
Okay, and I just want to make sure everyone knows that, and it is also in your bio. Now, because we are out of time, I want to ask you also if you could please hang by after we're off air. But if you have one final statement to everybody out there listening, what would you say? And remember, we are international.
Wow. I feel like what I would normally end with, we've talked about throughout the show, which was a great conversation. Thank you so much. But just, if God gave me the gift of being able to make people laugh. So when I make them laugh, I feel like I'm helping them to release something. I'm grateful for that. What I'm also hoping is that I am standing in front of someone, or many, many people, and they are watching me be my authentic self. And that's going to inspire and encourage them to be their authentic self. I am doing something that has no blueprint, that makes no sense. Who does comedy and how and why? I hope that if you're within the sound of my voice, or if you ever see me on stage one day, or if you just follow me on Twitter and Instagram, please do. Numbers count in this game, by the way. That if I do nothing before I leave this earth, I inspire many, many, many people to have the courage to just be who they are and pursue their true happiness and their true joy.
And that is absolutely the best advice you can give for everybody regarding any situation. Vaughn,
including relationships. If you read the book, and I know you have to close out, but if you do get the book and you read it, you'll find that everything that you're learning in that book is just how to live in your truth, not lie to be in a relationship, not compromise, just truly and authentically be with someone and matching each other's truth, and not suppressing your true emotion and hurting yourself internally and making yourself unhappy for someone else. Just truly living your truth. It goes in relationships and career. And it's all in that book. You can apply any of that stuff to any part of your life.
And it's following your heart. Von Decarlo, it has been a true pleasure. Like I said, please hang tight real quick for us to get off air. Everybody listening, we apologize for going overboard. For those who I normally would have time to thank, we ran out of time, so you know who you all are. Remember, tomorrow is Flashback Fridays. You will hear one of my very first interviews, which goes back to 2013, April 2013. Other than that, we'll be back Monday night with another live show, same place, same time. With that being said, folks, this is Dr. J, and I am officially signing off.